Ezra Delacroix lived with an almost clinical precision. His world was made up of meticulously calculated routines, controlled environments, brief relationships, and a silence that was more fulfilling than any company. The stone mansion that dominated the Swiss hilltops overlooking Lake Geneva was his personal sanctuary, a fortress of glass, marble, and shadows in which he could both lose himself and find himself. Inside, nothing moved without his permission. Nothing was left to chance. Each room had a purpose. Each piece had a story. And everything obeyed the sound of his piano, as if music were the only organic truth in that carefully shielded existence. But that night, when he returned from Vienna, something had changed. It wasn't something visible. It wasn't the arrangement of the curtains or the positioning of the brass candlesticks that he always polished himself. It was a vibration in the air, a sound that wasn't there but had been, an invisible impression, like a perfume that lingers in the air long after someone has left. Ezra calmly locked the front door. He placed a key in the crystal bowl. He took off his dark gray wool overcoat, hanging it up silently. He walked to the main hall, where a grand piano rested in the shadows like a sleeping beast. It was then that he saw it. Something was out of place on the black piano top. An envelope, thick cream paper, sealed with gold wax. A hand-engraved, raised floral symbol. Ezra stopped. He stood still, as if any movement might trigger an invisible trap. The envelope wasn't there before. He took 2 steps. The solid wood floor groaned beneath his feet. The air seemed to hold the breath of the house. When he reached the piano, he touched the paper with his fingertips. The wax was still slightly warm. A subtle warmth, almost intimate. He tore the seal. The letter inside was handwritten. The slanted, precise handwriting danced with an almost erotic elegance. He read it slowly, line by line. I saw you tonight. The black shirt accentuated your shoulders in a way you wouldn't believe. I smelled the woody scent of your perfume before you even turned on the light. I was sitting on the couch, still. Your breath reached me first. I'm sorry I left before you noticed me. No name, no signature. Ezra stood still for several long seconds. Then he folded the letter carefully and took 2 steps away, as if he were handling something sacred or dangerous. The room was the same as when he had left. No signs of intrusion. The windows were locked. The motion sensors had not detected anything. The security system was intact. Everything except this. At breakfast the next morning, he sat at the table as usual. The entire house was run on home automation and automated systems, but Ezra insisted on making his own coffee the old-fashioned way. The ritual centered him. The copper kettle, the cloth filter, the aroma, the 3 pauses between each brewing step. Halfway through the second break, he found himself looking at the piano. Nothing there, but the feeling of presence persisted. As a precaution, he called in the security team to review the system. No sign of a break-in, no deactivated alarm codes, no irregular recordings. Maybe one of your friends had access to the inside of the house, suggested the technician. Ezra just gave him an icy glare in response. He didn't receive friends. There were no friends. There were contracts, meetings, nights, but never intimacy. That night he went upstairs and locked the door. He slept with the letter beside him on the bedside table. His sleep was restless. He dreamed of someone sitting at the piano, playing chords he had never composed. And there was a scent in the air. Jasmine. Sweet, thick, familiar. 3 days later, he found another letter. In the library, between the pages of a book he had left open weeks ago. Same paper, same perfume, same handwriting. The time between visits is cruel. I count the steps you take to the kitchen. Your coffee ritual. The pause between one sip and the next. There's a world in your breath, Ezra, and it won't let me sleep. Ezra closed his eyes. His hand shook slightly as he folded the paper. That couldn't be a coincidence. No one knew about his ritual. No one had access to that level of detail. No one should have. He decided to react. He inspected the entire house. He installed additional cameras, thermal sensors, continuous recordings. He checked entrances, hidden passages, old cameras. Nothing. The house was a safe. But someone or something seemed to have the key. The next night, he left the dark room. He sat in the armchair with a glass of wine and waited. He just waited. At 3:47, there was a brief interference with the camera pointing at the piano. A short second, and when the image came back, the envelope was there. Ezra put down his wine. He walked quickly, his footsteps echoing. The letter was real. The paper was warm. Warm. You don't have to see me. Just feeling me is enough. That's how real feelings start. Before the sight, before the touch. Just don't fight it. I've never been good at taking rejection. Ezra dropped the paper. A shiver ran down his spine. This wasn't a game. Not anymore. Ezra decided to face her. Not with violence, but with words, with vulnerability, with invitation. He took out paper and pen, objects he rarely used, and wrote, "If you're real, prove it to me. Tell me something no one else would know. Something that will break me." He folded the paper. He left it on the piano. He turned off all the lights in the house, and he waited. The old clock in the room showed 2:35 when a crack was heard. He ran. The letter was already there. In the black box at the bottom of your father's safe is a necklace with a broken amethyst. He gave it to the woman he loved before your mother. You saw this object only once, when you were 7. You cried, but you didn't know why. Ezra froze. The memory hit him with a dull pain. A forgotten memory, drowned in the decades. He went down to the basement and unlocked the safe with trembling hands. There was the black box, and inside it the necklace, exactly as described. The next morning, Ezra woke up on the office floor, without knowing how he ended up there. He had fallen asleep crying, the necklace clutched in his hand. During the day, he found himself absent from meetings, silent on the phone, distracted by the clouds passing by the huge panoramic window of his office. The woman from the letters was inside him now, like a fever, like a presence. The following letters changed their tone. They became more intimate, more sensual. You undressed in front of the mirror this morning without knowing I was watching. The tension in your shoulders, your skin under the light. You are beautiful even when you don't feel that way, especially when you don't feel that way. Ezra read and reread, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years, uncontrollable desire. He laid down that night with the letter on his chest, and he dreamed. She was there, sitting at the piano, naked from the waist up, her long hair covering part of her breasts. She played a melody he had never heard, but which seemed familiar. As he approached, she slowly turned around. Her face was familiar and unfamiliar, as if it were a blurred reflection of himself. He woke up with sweat running down his neck. The letter was still on his chest. The next night, there was no letter. Ezra searched the entire house. Nothing. He became restless. He walked in circles. He called out to her in a low voice. "Are you punishing me?" Silence. In the early hours of the morning, in despair, he sat down at the piano. He placed his fingers on the keys and played Clair de Lune. A dim light invaded the room. It wasn't electric, nor was it from the moon. It was something else. And then, in the reflection of the window, she appeared. Tall, pale, sheer dress, long dark hair. His eyes. She didn't speak, but she stared at him with an absurd intensity, as if she knew him completely. Ezra closed his eyes. When he opened them, she was gone. But on the piano, there was a new letter. "Now that you've seen me, everything changes. You've set me free. I was just voice. Now I'm form. I'm what you rejected in yourself. I'm what you locked away to survive." Ezra sat on the floor. He laughed. He cried. And for the first time in many years, he felt afraid of himself. In the following days, Ezra existed in a state of waiting. He slept little. He ate even less. He spent hours wandering around the house, playing parts of unfinished melodies, looking for signs, movements, shadows in the corners. He began to find letters in unexpected places, under the sheets, between the pages of a closed book, inside the pocket of his robe, even after he had washed it. Each letter was an emotional invasion, each line a wound. You talk in your sleep. You call me names you don't even know you know. Your mouth trembles when you dream, and when you wake up, you deny me. Other times, the tone was different, more possessive, more demanding. You belong to me, Ezra, not because I own you, but because I was made from the part you cast out. I am the piece you locked away when you learned to survive on your own. You created me, and now you must live with me. Ezra began to lose control. He missed meetings. He canceled trips. He turned off his phone for days. Friends, the few who still dared to call him that, were surprised, but he didn't respond. How could he explain that his life now revolved around an invisible presence? A woman who knew him better than he knew himself? One night, he woke up naked in his own bed. The letter was stuck to the skin of his chest, as if it had grown there. You felt me tonight, didn't you? The warmth, the breath, the touch in the center of your back, the pressure in your hips. I am not a delusion. I am the reflection of what you desire and fear. Ezra no longer knew what a hallucination was. He began to see shadows, reflections that were seconds late. He heard the piano playing when he wasn't in the room. He heard footsteps on the stairs while he was taking a shower. One night, he looked in the mirror, and she was behind him, her face inches from his neck, her gaze full of desire and hate. When he turned around, there was no one there. Sitting on the hallway floor, with his back against the wall, he laughed. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. "My body, my mind, my soul." The whisper came back, but it wasn't an echo. It was another voice. Female, short, breathless. "I want all of you." Ezra started writing back. Not letters, but confessions. He scribbled in old notebooks, on the basement walls, on tissues. "I remember the day I learned to lock my emotions away. It was at my mother's funeral. I was 8 years old. No one noticed, but I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because there was nowhere to let the pain out. Since then, I don't let anyone in. You came in." That morning, when Claire de Lune played for the 1000th time, something different happened. Her reflection did not appear. She really showed up. On the couch, in white, silent. Ezra left the piano. He walked toward her. Each step was a challenge to reality. She looked at him, and he said nothing, but there was a tear. He reached out his hand. She held it. Cold, real, present. She leaned in, kissed him, and in that instant, Ezra saw it all. The forgotten memories, the silenced childhood, the abuse, the shame, the repression of affection, the parts of himself that he threw away to become the admired and emotionally empty man that he was. She was that. It was all the women he never loved, all the feelings he had put aside, all the words he never said. She was him, fragmented, reunited. When he woke up, he was lying on the sofa. The white dress was hanging in the picture frame above the fireplace, and the last letter lay on his chest. "Now you know. You can choose, live with me, or erase the part of you that feels. But know this, if you erase me, you will never play a true note again." Ezra got up. He walked over to the piano, and it rang. Claire de Lune. His hands were shaking, but his eyes were moist, and for the first time, the melody sounded complete.